With visionary direction from Ridley Scott and an iconic creature design from H.R. Giger, Alien became an instant classic in 1979. But at its core was the original screenplay, written by Dan O'Bannon, that made it all possible. O'Bannon grew up on a steady diet of pulp science fiction stories and creature features, which many will note played a heavy influence on Alien, or Star Beast, as it was originally titled. O'Bannon has always said, when it comes to Alien, that he didn't steal from anyone. No, he stole from everyone. Any number of films and stories could be pointed at in having such a strong influence on the story of Alien, but today I wanted to hone in on one specifically. It, The Terror from Beyond Space. This is a 1958 science fiction film directed by Edward L. Kahn that became a classic in its own right. It scared up audiences in drive-in theaters all throughout the era, and afterward became a midnight movie staple with countless television broadcasts. The plot of the film is set in the far-off future of 1973, where the first manned expedition to Mars has come to grief. A rescue mission has been sent to the Red Planet to retrieve the sole survivor of the expedition, Colonel Edward Carruthers, who claims that a hideous alien monster killed his entire crew. His rescuers are skeptical of his story, but bring him aboard their spaceship, the Challenge 141, for a safe return to Earth in order to ultimately face a court-martial. Unbeknownst to this new crew, the alien has snuck aboard the second ship, and it soon becomes apparent that Carruthers was telling the truth. It, the titular creature from beyond space, begins killing the crew one by one, and they desperately form together to plan on how to destroy it before they're all killed. On that general basis alone, the resemblance to Alien is slight enough. You can see, in a broad sense, how O'Bannon's story may have tweaked elements from It's screenplay, written by Jerome Bixby, and tailored them to fit his own story. It has a rescue mission sent to Mars, where they find the original spaceship sent there. Alien doesn't feature a rescue mission per se, but the Nostromo's course has been diverted after being within the proximity of a supposed distress signal from LV-426. There, the crew finds the alien derelict spacecraft of unknown origin. In It, the creature is able to stow away on the ship in a fairly unremarkable way. Emergency airlock and C compartment, we're told, has been left open just before taking off. One of the crew had apparently been dumping out some empty supply crates, and just plain forgot to shut the hatch. This leaves a perfect moment of opportunity for the monster to sneak its way on board. This must not have impressed Dan O'Bannon too much, as one of his biggest struggles was in finding an interesting way to get the alien onto his movie ship. And boy, did he. One for the ages. Credit has to go to O'Bannon's writing partner and Alien executive producer Ronald Shusett, who came up with the idea to have a parasite infect one of the crew, leading to the surprise birth scene where the alien makes its first appearance. We have some generally similar scenes of characters going off on their own, only to be killed or captured by the alien. Hardly anything that will make a viewer shout plagiarism, but it is worth noting that in both films, the crew deduces that the alien is making its way around the ship through the air ducts. Both films feature a failed attempt by a character to capture the creature by entering the ducts in pursuit, and soon becoming hunted themselves. In both films, we get the inevitable scenes of the crew trying to come up with different plans on how to get rid of this deadly stowaway. The Nostromo's crew is presented with a more complex dilemma. As they've observed from its biology, this creature bleeds acid. If it's killed, it could melt right through the hull of the ship and kill them all, making it considerably more challenging to defeat it. With It, the challenge is a little more straightforward. While the crew is actually plentifully armed, the creature does happen to be invulnerable to gunfire. They even try grenades, which have little effect. Now, setting off grenades inside a spaceship. I think if CinemaSins existed in 1958, this movie would have taken a beating. What turns out to be the most similar, though, is the method that ends up working. At the film's climax, the creature is reaching the top level of the ship and advancing on the survivors. In Alien, of course, it's the escape shuttle, and the lone survivor is Ripley. They equip themselves in EVA suits, and just as the alien is about to strike, they open up the airlock. They fire upon it, slowing it down, and it's the coldness of space that finally becomes its tomb. The creature in It simply dies because of a lack of oxygen, while the xenomorph in Alien is blown away by the shuttle's exhaust. They look upon the alien threat to confirm it's truly dead and gone, and the day is saved. I have to admit that's a very similar fate, though needless to say what we see in Alien is more elaborate and fantastic, though that's true of the entire film itself. And there are plenty of little similarities scattered around, not just these plot points. We have a crew consisting of both men and women that experience a more relaxed atmosphere out on their mission, casual conversations during meals, smoking cigarettes, and generally shooting the shit. In a lot of the science fiction space travel films of the 50s, you wouldn't always see something like this. Alien followed suit and took that even further. I also find it interesting that It begins with the lone survivor of a crew's encounter with an alien monster recording an audio log of his experience. This, of course, is how Alien ends, with Ripley. We can look at all of these similarities and all of this inspiration and judge for ourselves just how close they may be. I can surely show you some of the clips in this video and talk about some of the scenes, but maybe the best way to truly come to a conclusion is to watch each film back to back and get the full experience. It's worth noting that in all the years that It aired on television, many times part of horror-themed programs with horror hosts speaking about the movie during commercial intervals, which includes Dr. Shock's Horror Theater, Ron Swede, the Ghoul of The Ghoul Show, Commander USA's Groovy Movies, George Lewis of Ghost Host Theater, and of course, Svengoolie, all bringing up these comparisons, and certainly all poking fun at some of its lower production value, like the cheesy imagery of the spaceship model flying through space, repeated a great many times throughout the entire film, and the infamous goof of suit performer Ray Crash Corrigan literally adjusting the mask of the creature costume to better see out of the eye holes, in a close-up shot no less, and all of that fun stuff. But there was only one instance where a network had the idea, and the broadcast rights, to air both It, the Terror from Beyond Space and Alien back-to-back. On June 7th, 1997, TNT's MonsterVision, hosted by Joe Bob Briggs, accomplished such a feat. In this case, Alien was aired first, followed by It, the Terror from Beyond Space. He was more than happy to point out the similarities and make sure audiences kept them in mind while watching both the films.
Great scene, and I want to remind you as we watch the thrilling conclusion of Alien that our second feature tonight will be It, the Terror from Beyond Space, which is the 1958 sci-fi movie that sued Alien, claiming that Alien ripped off their plot. We're going to settle this once and for all tonight on MonsterVision, so roll it.
Now, hold on a second. Did It really end up suing Alien? Did it really go that far? You would think all of this was in good fun. Over the years, it feels like it's amounted to just a little piece of trivia. It's inevitably noted, however briefly, when It, the Terror from Beyond Space is mentioned, that it was an inspiration for Alien. Just matter-of-factly. Never in an accusatory way. But could this have been taken more seriously? Did Alien share enough in common with It to warrant any kind of litigation? There were some who believed, and maybe still do, that shortly after Alien's release, the makers of It quietly sued 20th Century Fox and settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. As you heard in the previously shown clip, Joe Bob Briggs claims exactly that in his MonsterVision episode. This is not accurate, but like any urban legend, there is actually a kernel of truth to it. Mind you, the comparisons weren't something that appeared as a revelation years later. Many recognized the resemblance immediately. In the fall of 1979, after Alien became a huge hit during the summer, Cinefantastique magazine sat down with Alien's producer and co-writer David Giler, who addressed this supposed controversy. Says Giler, "We only began to hear about It, the Terror, towards the end of the production. I actually haven't seen it, but I know of it. We were convinced we were doing something new stylistically, even if the basic outlines were the same. I gather the alien hiding on a spaceship idea is pretty much a classic premise with science fiction writers, like the gunfight in a western. So the similarities you refer to didn't bother us. The interviewer pulled no punches, bringing up the possibility of legal action. He says, rumor has it the copyright owners of It, the Terror from Beyond Space are talking about suing Fox over similarities between the two films." Giler's response, "I haven't heard anything about it, nothing at all. The first I heard about the similarities between the two films was from you. I know some of the more esoteric science fiction magazines have commented on tie-ins between It, the Terror, and Alien, but I'm not a regular reader of these magazines. Personally, I think it's a question you ought to address to O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. If somebody is responsible for stealing the idea, it's them. They signed a paper saying it was an original idea. If it isn't, they lied to us. It wouldn't surprise me at all to learn that O'Bannon stole the idea, I must tell you." As you can probably tell, there's no love lost between David Giler and Dan O'Bannon, all the reasons for which may require an entirely different video. But in this interview, Giler goes into some detail about the changes he and Walter Hill made to the script and how he felt the final credit of the screenplay being awarded to O'Bannon alone by the Writers Guild of America didn't make much sense. He also mentions the state of the script before his revisions came along. Walter Hill probably had more to do with getting the O'Bannon script launched than anyone. Mark Haggard at Goldwyn Studios asked him to read it, and Walter championed the project from then on in. It was a bone skeleton of a story then. Really terrible. Just awful. You couldn't give it away. It was amateurishly written, although the central idea was sound. Basically, it was a pastiche of 50s movies. We, Walter Hill and I, took it and rewrote it completely, added the Ash and the robot subplot. We added the cat, Jones. We fleshed it out, basically. If we had shot the original O'Bannon script, we would have a remake of It, The Terror from Beyond Space. With all of that in mind, we can confirm through this interview at least, and other records, that no such lawsuit or even any kind of bad blood between the makers of It and Alien exists. Just 2 years ago, It, The Terror from Beyond Space was treated to a very nice restoration and high-definition release from the studio Kino Lorber. The special edition Blu-ray came with 3 commentary tracks included as special features. One by film historian Tom Weaver justifies the connections these two films and others had, as well as citing interviews from the writer of It himself, according to Weaver's commentary. For anyone who's ever thought, poor Jerome Bixby, he had the Terror script ripped off by Alien, well, just remember, the poor writers of Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World had their script ripped off by It the Terror and Jerome Bixby. Bixby has freely, happily, and enthusiastically talked about the fact that The Thing was his inspiration. I'm sure he liked the scene in The Thing where the heroes, searching for the Thing, open a door, and shockingly, the Thing is right there. So, in It the Terror, they open a door, and, shockingly... Bixby has also talked about the fact that he always wanted It the Terror to have the same kind of overlapping dialogue as The Thing. Talking to Fangoria interviewer Don Cullen-Smith, Bixby said, "My springboard for It was what I considered the best science fiction horror film ever made. The original, The Thing. A small group of people pitted against an implacable menace in an inescapable, isolated situation. Aha, a spaceship." He also told Fangoria, 20 years after It, The Terror, other movie makers were to wake to the same blinding concept. I'm referring, of course, to Alien. For It, The Terror, I labored to produce rushing, overlapping, spontaneous-sounding dialogue, such as distinguished The Thing. Unfortunately, that kind of dialogue looks weird on paper, so nobody knew what I was trying to do. And even if they had, there wouldn't have been time to rehearse it on It's microscopic schedule. So the dialogue was edited, and not played as I'd hoped, to my regret. Tom Weaver ends the quote here, offering his own opinion. I've never quite understood the flap that some fans have made over It, The Terror versus Alien. The idea of people trapped in an inescapable location with a creature from space, it started with The Thing, and the man from Planet X made it the same time. Planet X was set on an island that couldn't contact the outside world. Creature from the Black Lagoon wasn't a space monster, but scientists were trapped in the lagoon with it. This situation occurred again in It, The Terror, Planet of the Vampires, Queen of Blood. There's a scene of an outside force infiltrating the rocket ship in Quatermass Experiment. Submarine-wise, there's Destination Outer Space, and probably 47 Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea episodes. On and on and on. Then Alien premieres, and some It the Terror fans raised the rhubarb, but even Bixby wasn't convinced by them. Another commentary track, by film historian Craig Beam, takes matters even further. He digs deep into the roots of the so-called controversy and cites even further influence not only garnered by Alien, but by It, The Terror from Beyond Space, and many others. Brace yourselves for a crash course in science fiction horror. Here's what he had to say. By this point, you may be experiencing a strange sense of familiarity, as if perhaps you've seen this story play out before. A murderous alien stows away on a spaceship and starts stealthily picking off the crew one by one, and now said alien is skulking around the ship's air ducts. Where have we seen this one before? 1979's Alien, that's where. But before we start crying plagiarism and burning our copies of the Alien Quadrilogy Blu-ray set, there's a rabbit hole we need to venture down into. A twisted labyrinth of short stories and screenplays of fever dreams and recurring themes. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you over the next few minutes, so buckle up. We begin with the publication of Who Goes There by John W. Campbell, writing as Don A. Stewart in the August 1938 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. The novella depicts the discovery of an alien spacecraft buried in the ice near a research outpost in Antarctica. Also discovered is a frozen alien, which, after being thawed out, demonstrates its shape-shifting abilities and starts killing off the scientists one by one, mimicking their appearance as it absorbs them, presumably for nutrition. A year later, the July 1939 issue of Astounding Science Fiction contained the first published science fiction story by A.E. Van Vogt, Black Destroyer. The tale concerns a spaceship crew who, while exploring the ruins of a long-dead civilization on an alien planet, brings aboard a cat-like creature who feeds on phosphorus, which is, conveniently enough, an abundant mineral in human physiology, so it starts killing off the crew for nourishment. It's implied that the creature is a descendant of the race that once ruled the planet, which devolved into barbarism over time due to food scarcity. 2 months later, in September 1939, Astounding published another Van Vogt story, Discord and Scarlet, which finds the same spaceship crew encountering an alien floating in space. So, naturally they bring it aboard, because, hey, the same thing can't possibly happen twice, right? This alien reproduces by laying its eggs in a host's stomach, which it does to several of the crew members before the crew manages to trick it into leaving the ship through an airlock. Fast forward to 1950. Both stories, along with 2 other Van Vogt stories featuring the same crew, were combined with some revisions to form The Voyage of the Space Beagle, another example of the fix-up approach described earlier. Black Destroyer comprises chapters 1 through 6, and Discord and Scarlet comprises chapters 13 through 21. Van Vogt, incidentally, cited Campbell's Who Goes There as a major factor in his decision to write science fiction in the first place. 1951 saw the release of the film The Thing from Another World, written by Charles Lederer with some uncredited help from Howard Hawks and Ben Hecht, based on Campbell's Who Goes There. And by based, I mean it was an official credited adaptation, loose though it was. The alien here isn't a shapeshifter, for example, but much of the basic story is the same. The filmed version also has the alien specifically feeding on the blood of its victims. 4 years later, the September 1955 issue of Imaginative Tales featured The Invisible Enemy by Jerry Soule. This particular imaginative tale introduces us to the crew of the warship Nesbit as they visit a remote planet to determine the fate of 3 previous expeditions, which never reported back. One of the 3 ships is found intact, but her crew is nowhere to be found. After several Nesbit crew members vanish without a trace, it's discovered that the planet is essentially one gigantic ocean of sand filled with large, porpoise-like creatures with an appetite for human blood. Now, you can see a number of common elements across these stories. The alien threats are always after something present in the human body. Blood, phosphorus, a warm place to gestate offspring, and they all feature plots in which the unfortunate humans are dispatched one after the other when they are alone, forming a mystery that is gradually puzzled out by those who ultimately survive. But none of these stories feel like clones or rip-offs of one another. If anything, they're variations on a theme. On a more prosaic level, each of them follows the same simple "and then there were none" blueprint. Characters get knocked off one by one, the same simple narrative structure that would later inform countless slasher and serial killer films. Which brings us to 1958 and It, the Terror from Beyond Space, written by Jerome Bixby. Bixby's screenplay represents a distillation of all those short stories. We have Soule's interplanetary expedition to investigate missing comrades. We have Campbell's alien creeping around a confined space, killing off humans one by one. We have Van Vogt's transposition of that scenario to a spaceship, plus this theory that the alien in question is a devolved form of a once superior race. We have an alien who must feed on humans to survive, which is a common element across all those stories, though our alien here is desperately seeking oxygen, which is a newish wrinkle. Lots of familiar details to be sure. Nevertheless, Bixby's It doesn't purport to be based on anything. It's credited to him as an original screenplay. I called Bixby's screenplay a distillation of multiple short stories, and I do think that's accurate versus calling it a patchwork ripoff. Mark Twain once wrote that, quote, "There is no such thing as a new idea. It is impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope. We give them a turn, and they make new and curious combinations. We keep on turning and making new combinations indefinitely, but they are the same old pieces of colored glass that have been in use through all the ages." End quote. Keep that in mind as we fast forward to the release of Alien in 1979, which, like It, is presented as being based on an original screenplay by Dan O'Bannon based on a treatment by O'Bannon and producer Ronald Shusett. Alien depicts a spaceship crew dealing with a stowaway alien who picks them off one by one, but not to eat them. These creatures parasitically use other life forms to gestate their young. At one point, they pursue the alien into the ship's air ducts. At another, a character arms himself with a blowtorch. Ultimately, the alien is forced out into space through an airlock. Sound familiar? It certainly sounded familiar to A.E. Van Vogt, who initiated legal action against 20th Century Fox due to the film's similarities to Black Destroyer and Discord in Scarlet. Fox paid $50,000 to him in an out-of-court settlement. Interestingly, there's no indication that Van Vogt ever saw compensation when It appeared on the scene in 1958. Perhaps it was that egg-laying parasite angle, which Bixby didn't use but is a key plot point in Alien, that pushed Vogt over the litigation edge. Bixby told author and film historian Dennis Fisher that while he did detect some quote-unquote conspicuous similarities between the two films, he loved Alien. So much so that he went to go see it twice when it was released in 1979. I have to give Craig Beam huge kudos for this rundown. Detailed, illuminating, and very possibly the best and most clarifying account of the entire matter. Well worth sharing here, and it's well worth checking out that Blu-ray release of It for this and the 2 other commentary tracks, which are great. Kino Lorber did a commendable job with this release, and while it hardly had the budget to create seemingly infinite bonus material such as the likes we've seen with the Alien quadrilogy, it was certainly a release that delivered for the film's fans. And that's just the thing. I wouldn't at all devalue It, The Terror from Beyond Space, as a mere footnote to Alien. It is a classic, an important film in its own right. It has a legacy all of its own, and it's had its own relationship with the marketing beast, with a fair amount of merchandise over the years. Collectible action figures, model kits, statues and busts, Halloween masks, even its own comic book series. It has its legion of devoted fans to this day, the generation who grew up with these late-night broadcasts who proudly refer to themselves as monster kids, and the new generations who discover it today. For example, that Joe Bob TNT presentation may have been from the 90s, but the Svengoolie airing was fairly recent. He hosted the film in 2022, available on MeTV. But the old and the new generation share a commonality themselves. Whether it was Alien or It, we have all found joy being glued to the television, alone in the dark, or maybe with friends or siblings, having the hell scared out of us by an otherworldly creature that poses a deadly threat to humanity. That's something we all respond to. That's something that taps deep into the universal fears we all have. As that Twain guy noted, the ideas may not be new, but the presentation changes over time, and we can take value in that. Still, we can get a lot out of visiting those older stories. They're not going anywhere, and they still have an impact. Since it is spooky season, maybe you've been watching scary movies all month yourself, and if you're looking to kick it a little bit old school, then It, The Terror from Beyond Space is a perfect choice for your October viewing selection. If you've seen it before, but maybe not in a while, maybe now's the time for a revisit, and if you've never had the pleasure of seeing it, then I would highly recommend doing so. Whatever you may be up to, I hope you have a happy and safe Halloween. Enjoy your scary movies, your sweets, and remember to keep watching the skies. And as always, I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with all the latest videos from Alien Theory. My very special thanks today goes out to Nicholas Butta, our Wayland-Yutani executive, and Gregory Ford, the Patreon Hive Praetorian. A very special thanks to Lady Anne in the Ellen Ripley Tier of Excellence. If you'd like to join the Hive and support the channel, check out my Patreon page for further information. You can also follow me on social media. Follow @alien_theory on X, formerly Twitter. Follow @AlienTheoryYT on Facebook and Instagram for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.